Okay, so we are very close to test, fire up, test to see if everything works, everything runs, wiring is good and all that. So I'm gonna run you through, first of all, I think in the last video I said I was going to add an inline filler. So I found this one on eBay. It was actually really short, which is one of the reasons why I picked it over this one here. I don't know if you can see this one. This is more, in my opinion, this is more like a Japanese style. The cap and everything, it's a little smaller. There's no pressure relief on it. This one has a pressure relief. But this one was shorter. So I figured in this little straight part here, as it came off of the neck there, I figured that would be a really good spot. Plus, it just fits nice. It's just a really good design there. I found it on Amazon. It was like $18 or $20, something like that. So I got that installed, and then I hooked up my overflow here with a little bit of a T, just because you know it had an outlet in it, so I just wanted to feed it back into here. So that's it for the cooling system. That's it. I just got to change the plug. For some reason the plugs are weird on the round Francis wiring harness. It doesn't fit. It's the same style. For some reason it doesn't fit. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna run you through the wiring because I had to take a wire dieted Ford Mustang harness and then adapt it into the Ron Francis chassis harness. So I've gone through how I've connected the obvious connectors, right? The A, B, C, D, all that stuff. In another video, you can go watch that. But this is the confusing parts. So the confusing parts is, and this is, I've been up in the air with questions of this from the very beginning. So they give you this. This is the one from the Ron Francis kit here. It's coil EFI crank. This is how you have to splice in, because when you turn the key, essentially, the engine computer has to power on. But the engine computer needs power. Well, the OBD2 part of it needs power all the time. And so that is this yellow wire here from my Mustang. And you can see the guy that dieted it, he labeled it OBD2 power, 12 volt hot all the time. I put an inline fuse in it because that's what he said. It says a 10 amp fuse. And then I wired it for testing purposes. I wired it to the hot side of the ignition switch. So that will stay there for testing purposes. When the battery gets turned on, that will be the power for that. Okay, so that's that there. So that is giving power to the OBD2 at all times. Then there is a wire that has to, so then when you turn the key, the computer's got to tell the coils and all that, hey, we got to turn on, we got to prime the fuel pump, we got to do all that stuff that is required in an EFI system. Some carbureted systems require that as well if you have an electric fuel pump. But in an EFI, it's going to be electric. So you've got to tell that system all to fire everything up, right? The inertia switch is part of that. That goes to the relay. So this is another thing. You have to cut this orange wire here. It tells you in the instructions for the Ron Francis, you got to cut this wire. And then you've got to connect it. And I put, this is labeled here, 12 volt switched to fuel pump PCM controlled. I have switched that, and that is what I believe to be the wire that needs to go to that. And so I've connected it from the relay to that. So when you turn the key, boom, that's going to fire that up. The inertia switch is the kind of a circuit breaker, as you know, I guess in terms of, but that is part of the circuit. So that is grounded. Boom, that is activated. That tells the relay to fire the pump. And then the coils have to be, let's say, armed as well. So they're ready to fire. So coil or EFI, that's what this orange wire is. And this guy labeled it connect to Ron Francis coil wire. Okay, there you go. That's done there. Now, there's another wire that it makes everything kind of confusing, and it's called EFI crank. Now, from what I saw online, that wire has to go to some systems. There's some other part of that system that has to, I guess when you turn the key to the start position, that starts to crank everything over. I've also read a little bit, and what some people say is that there's a lot of systems out there that don't need it. So I'm going to test it first. The part of my initial test is going to be, does my system need that? And I will know when I go to fire it up. And then if something is not working, I know that that is part of it. I've also grounded. I'll go over some of this. I've grounded here for the OBD2. I have also grounded. Let me go to the other side, and I'm going to start to show you how I did all my power. Oh, I grounded this here. This had to be grounded. This is the grounded chassis. I believe this is part of the computer ground that has to be done. So that's done there. I grounded this here. This is coming from like the mass air plug and all that. That's that. So I'm imagining that's a power part of the power pole here that is grounded, and all of this here that has to be grounded. Probably the CCRM that has to be grounded, and that's how it's done. I'm assuming. So the guy who dieted the harness, he gave me this power pole. So I mounted it here, and I ran the wire. He said a fusible link. I've put a fusible link here with a 30 amp fuse. He didn't specify what fuse, but I put 30 amp because that's a pretty decent size. And that connects to the battery. And he says connect to battery at starter. That's where it goes down, to the starter. I've also connected all of my other wires to the starter and the solenoid. So I got my blue wire here that I put a little extension on, and I put that on the solenoid part. And then the 3 wires from the Ron Francis wiring harness go to the starter pole there. And then I've got my main battery cable there. And then that all runs to here and also to the ignition switch. So that is that part of it. And that's pretty much it. Now, I do want to hook up a water temperature gauge. I'm trying to figure out which one I should get. That's all this harness here. So things are starting to be simplified in a way. And it's getting a little easier to kind of see how everything goes. The next will be to fire the engine up. Let me show you this as well. I've connected the alternator, just so you know. I had to take this bracket off, take this little cap off here, and there's kind of a port, not a port, but a post there that has the wire for the alternator that goes to it from the actual engine harness, and then the Ron Francis kit, it comes from this Y back here. I'm gonna zip tie that down as well. And mine doesn't I don't believe, uses this brown wire. So I zip tied that back there. But mine is connected to the ignition switch. So I might disconnect that when I go to fire it up, because I don't think I need that. And I'm gonna wait to kind of clean all this up, because the other part of this is I have to redo these vacuum tubes. I tried to move one, I bumped it, and they're so brittle that they just broke. So that is one of my next steps, is I'm gonna do silicone vacuum tubing and order all that up so that I can replace all these. And I don't think I need all of them. So like a couple of these that go to the kind of solenoids and emission system stuff, I don't think I'm gonna need. But I do need this EGR one, and I need this fuel pressure, for sure need this fuel pressure regulator. I probably only need the fuel pressure regulator. I don't know if I need the EGR one, but I hooked my EGR system up. Then the next step after that will be to hook the coil, the plug wires up, which I'm gonna do. That's gonna be one of my last things, because I'm gonna turn it over at first once I put all the fluids in it, get the battery, turn it over, get the oil system pumping through. Something that me personally that I always do because I don't want to dry start it and to get heated without any oil on anything. So I always run it, pump it over a little bit, and get some oil kind of going, like onto the cams and everything like that. Yeah. Other than that, the next part of this video should be me saying, I'm about to fire it up. Here we go. Here's what I've done in the meantime. So hopefully that's it. I'm not setting myself up for failure with that statement, but cut here and on to getting ready to fire it up. So here we are at the next step, which I said was going to be getting it ready to start, which we are. We've got, so let me just run you through a couple of the other little things that I did. So these come with these, like the Mustang does come with, these really brittle nylon, well, brittle after years of heating and cooling, and they just, as soon as I like brushed against one, it broke. So I decided to replace it all with silicone, and it uses those for the vacuum. And this engine, it doesn't actually have a lot of vacuum operated things because the brakes are not working off vacuum. And so the basic vacuum kind of operable things that it does have is the fuel pressure regulator on the fuel rail over here on the driver's side has a vacuum line that goes to it. The EGR, I believe this is the EGR solenoid because this is the valve here, and that runs off vacuum. And then I had another vacuum line that was going to the purge canister and all that, which I don't have. So I plugged that in. That's this here. And then I sent the other vacuum tube over here and I wired it using the Y that was already on the car. And so part of it goes to this piece here, which then sends it up to the EGR valve, and then the other one goes over to the fuel pressure regulator there. So I replaced all that. Then I wanted to put the gauges on that would be most important. So I got a water temperature gauge and I got an oil pressure gauge, and I hooked those up. So everything should be hooked up to run the car and get it going. And then I put the dash kind of on temporarily with the ignition switch in the place it's supposed to be. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. I still have to go, this fan connector, I gotta find a new fan connector, but other than that, it could still run without it. I'd like to have the fan just to test it. I don't think I'm gonna need it, but I'd like to have it so that I can see if it turns on and if there's anything else I gotta do, because it did come with a relay that I have not installed yet, so I don't know if I need that. But yeah, that's pretty much how that goes. And then I've got the battery hooked up. So I just went into AutoZone and I got a regular, battery for a 96 Mustang GT. And then hooked it all up here. So in theory, we should get power. Let me get my test light here and we'll see. So now I'm gonna start to test, before I fire it up, obviously, I'm gonna start to test just electrical pieces here, because the battery's hooked up. The ignition switch is not on, but the battery's hooked up. So we should get, I'm just gonna try to hold this, so bear with me here. Let's see. So we are getting power there. So that's a good sign. And the light is nice and bright. Which means we're getting power down here at the starter. So that's all good. Which then means we're gonna get power to the ignition switch, in which we can check really quick. I like to do all this stuff because I hate, in my experience, firing up engines that have been sitting for a while or whatever. A lot of little things are overlooked, like tightening lines and things like that. So I like to just go over everything, do these little checks, because then you're not sitting there like, well, why aren't we getting power to the coil? Well, oh, because we blew a fuse or something and we didn't check because, so this should be power. Yep, we got power to the ignition switch. So there you go. Okay, I've turned the key to accessory and it sounded like the fuel pump went on. So we're getting, I hear relays clicking and I hear the fuel pump priming. So that's good. That's very good. I guess the next question would be, do we get power to the coils? But I don't think the fuel pump is going to stop priming. Oh, it does, okay. So the fuel pump stopped priming and we have power. So now we should have, technically we should have power to the coil, I think. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get into one of those wires, but there should be power to the coils. I don't think if you hook it, because we're not getting any spark yet, so we're not going to get any power through one of the plug wires because there's no, but the fuel pump primed. Fuel pump primed and it turned off. I heard relays clicking. Relays are clicking and there's a box over there that is buzzing and then turning off. So, it's either that could be the module, the power control module. But we're getting power. We're getting power. So that's step one, in my opinion, is we get electric to where we need electric. Then we're gonna put, fill it with fluids, top it all off, and then give it a go and see what happens. So yeah, that'll be the next step. So here we are, the moment of truth. Everything comes down to this moment. Does the engine start? It turns over because I filled it with fluids. So yeah, let's talk to this point here, because this should be the end of the video where it comes to life. So how did I get here? Or what did I do before I got here? Okay, so I put coolant in first. It immediately started to leak from the plastic, the way at the top where the plastic meets the aluminum. So I got a new radiator, and probably better off because this radiator looks a lot nicer. This is the old one here. You can see just kind of trashy. But yeah, I guess from just sitting, it must have cracked or being jostled around or something. It cracked at the top. It immediately started to leak coolant. So I only wasted, one thing of coolant. Okay, so I put the coolant in. I got some fluid, some brake fluid in it. I've got to go over all of my brake lines, and I've got to keep snugging them and tighten them, and then because they all leak. They all leak a little, or not all of them, but most of them leak. And I got it solved a little bit, but I'm probably gonna have to go over it and really dig in and tighten a bunch of stuff when it comes to the brake fluid anyway. Then I've got I got engine oil in, I've got oil filter, I've got power steering fluid, which is also in the reservoir here, which is also the transmission fluid is the same fluid. So I got that in. It's really easy to get to the transmission fill because it's right there where the brake goes, the parking brake. That was pretty easy. I'm not getting, as I'm turning it over, I'm not getting oil pressure. So I don't think that's because I'm not getting any oil pressure. I think that's because the gauge is not hooked up to a sending unit. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. Other than that, I'm trying to think what else. Oh yeah, I had a fuel leak. A weird one because, so the fuel line runs from here down in there where the back of the, pretty much the back of the cockpit is, runs down that fuel rail, and then it pops up down here. And for some reason, I heard this little, which is still, I don't know, it still might be leaking a little bit. It's odd because, and it must be like, so it's the same end, right? It's the same fitting on both ends, and on one end it's leaking, the other end it's not. I tightened it a million times, so that I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh well, you gotta tighten them. I've tightened them. So it must be like a path of least resistance thing. If it gets a freer way on one end, it goes that way. So I don't know if there's something up with the flare. I don't know, but I'm gonna try to fire it up anyway, just to see, because I put all the spark plugs on and I want to see if it runs. So now is the moment where we're going to do that. Look at that. That fired right up. That sounds pretty good, I will say. All right. So it fired up. Fired right up, and I'm not joking. That was the first time. So something killed it. Not sure what. It does look like the power steering fluid in the reservoir is all foamy. So I don't know what that is, but anyway, yeah, fired up. Let's see if it goes again. So it doesn't want to stay idling. It seems to, when it's settling down, it seems to want to turn off. I'll have to figure that out. Don't know what that is. But anyway, there you go. It does fire up. It just doesn't want to stay running. So I'll have to figure out what that is. But you can see there, it was running, fired up. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. We'll see with that why it's not. That's probably the end of this video. I'll have to see why it won't stay running, and then yeah, I'll have to figure that out. But there you go. That's it. That's to this point. So now it's just a bunch of fine tuning, getting it dialed in, getting it to figure out why it won't stay idling, which I'm sure probably something simple, usually is. And then I'll do, once I get things fine tuned, maybe I'll do another one of like an update of what I found and what got fixed and what's going on there. So yeah, that's it for now.